Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of helping B2B high-ticket service providers grow one lesson at a time. Well, we screen the world to find the right people for this podcast because, we need to have some really good lessons for you. And guess what? I found one, and that's why today I wanted to introduce you to, I have written the name and the surname, so Bernhard Welzel. I hope I got it right. And he's coming from Germany, and I think he has a really nice lessons to share. So Bernhard, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Dancho. I'm super excited for our conversation. Since we started working, I got so much great news from you, and I love to share this a little bit.
Yeah, and for the rest of the people, I already talked about with Bernhard on the frameworks and the process that he's doing. And then I said, you know what, you actually come and be a guest because I really think you have a golden nugget here that you can share with the audience. But Bernhard, let's not jump ahead of us. Maybe you can give us some introduction on, who you are, what you do, and why people should listen to you, because of course you need to have some value that you want to share.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Bernhard. I'm from Germany. I am a founder by heart. I was starting 7 companies so far. Sold 2 of them, even made a little bit of money. And the other 4 are great stories for a time when we share a drink and talk about learnings. I also worked a lot as a product owner or product manager in the IT industry. So I'm very specialized in software development, leading teams, getting them to become high performance and creating value. Beside that, I'm a German, but I don't like football at all, which is really great because my hometown has the worst football team in all of Germany. They always win at the beginning of the season and then they lose really hard at the end. So you build a lot of character being a fan.
Bernhard, I would be surprised if you watch football and you've managed to start 7 companies. It kind of doesn't go hand by hand.
Yeah, that's true. Starting companies is usually a lot of fun, but also much more work. And I love putting the time in and learning all the skills, which of course takes time.
Yeah, I have one and I'm still trying to cope with that. But how many of them just failed? I'm genuinely curious because, at one point we wanted to make a podcast like failed startups. And then everybody that failed can talk and say what mistakes they did in order to fail.
Yeah, so I would argue so far, 2 of them were successful. So I sold both businesses and they got absorbed into existing companies. Mm-hmm. For the others, they failed in 4 different ways. I think the most fun one was a company that was really successful in the social media space, and we wanted to sell it. And then one of the co-founders decided that he wants at least twice as much money. And we never sold it, and it died a year later. So this one I'm still salty about. But to be honest, for the other 3, it was basically me having a great idea for a solution, not knowing how to sell to a product, not knowing how to build up a market, not knowing how to make a valuable business model.
And were all of the companies in the IT space, like software solutions?
Yeah, very simply. The very first one was basically a marketplace for freelancers. So today this is Upwork. Yeah. We started out similarly, but never got the
traction.
Yes, and because it's a marketplace business models are the hardest ones to get right. And if you're very young and more ambitious than having knowledge, I think a marketplace is almost impossible to crack. Because you need to create both supply and demand. And in the freelance world at that time, there were like 5 or 6 different relevant marketplaces. Nowadays, it's Upwork and basically nothing else because they're just so dominant.
True. And Bernhard, you also said that, to build these companies, you have to be a product owner one way or the another. But how did you actually move more deeper into the product development in the product owner role?
Yeah, so as a student, I started out being a developer. I love programming. I think it's one of the most fun way of getting into a flow state.
Not really. Okay.
And then of course, there's always a high demand for developers. And I realized that developing is awesome and I miss it sometimes, but I also love working with people. I'm a certified NLP coach, so I love communication. But more importantly, it's about listening. And when you develop a product as a product owner, as a product manager, it is really about listening to customers. It's about listening to stakeholders. It's about asking the right questions so you understand why they want certain features, what are the needs, what are the desires, and of course, how does the life of people change when this feature is built, when the product exists. And ultimately, as a developer, you're building stuff and changing the world a little bit. But as a product manager, by listening in, you can actually decide what is the feature that makes the difference. And that is the part I really love about my job.
Wow, it's interesting. When I was reading about the Scrum methodology like a decade ago, the recommendation was that a developer should not be a product owner because you need a person with a business mindset and not a developer. But somehow you took the best from the both, because with the development, you have the technical, systematic way of looking at stuff. But by NLP and listening and the human angle, you're actually able to juggle between the two words.
Yes, and I also have I think a big advantage I have is I studied economics and business management, but the biggest experience that helped me with my day-to-day job was that I worked in an intensive care unit, so in a hospital, where you really know how to deliver a product that actually has a meaning and an impact. And it's a lot about structures and systems and hierarchies and just getting the thing right because your customer really wants you to be successful at your job.
True. And Bernhard, I mean, the reason why I actually invited you on the call is because your latest business, I hope it's the latest one, Polyfinity, is actually in the IT world, in the product owner, where you are actually trying to help product owners of in-house development teams to better build their products. I maybe mixed it a bit, but I'm sure you're going to tell it better what you do in Polyfinity.
No, yeah, you're spot on. And maybe I start out by sharing a little bit. When I don't work on my own products, I'm usually working for bigger corporations as an interim product owner, helping them usually in a situation where something has gone very wrong, people leaving the company, customers are unhappy, something is burning at a high pace. and then I'm a little bit like a firefighter. So everybody leaves screaming and there's a lot of heat and a lot of suffering. And then I go in and I put out the fire and stabilize the situation enough so that a normal person with less tendency or a tolerance for pain can take over the job. What happens in these organizations is also the biggest pain I experience. It's that you have a lot of awesome people, highly qualified people. A lot of them are motivated beyond reason. I mean, they should be very frustrated after a couple of years in these organizations, but usually they're still like, a lot of them believe in the purpose of the organization. What still goes wrong is that they are spending so much time and energy and money on building products, building software, and then at the end, everything is coming too late. It takes twice as long as planned, and nobody's really happy at the end because it's underwhelming in terms of what value it creates. And that is something I've experienced a couple of times, like basically every time you look in an organization, you find parts of it where there's a lot of wasted potential. And ultimately, I believe it's because product management is hard. You need to deal with a lot of different things. You need to deal with a lot of complexity.
Yeah.
And it boils down to the fun game that you cannot predict the outcome. You can work for for a year on a project. You can spend a lot of money, and then you push it into the market, and the market is like, meh.
I was a product owner, Bernhard, so I feel the pain, especially for me. You're a developer. For you could communicate with the developers. For me, the biggest struggle was I know the market, I talk with customers, and then translating it to developers was the product owner role, which was really hard because you need to take ownership of the roadmap. Like what features to build, what kind of features are good, what kind of bad, which is more prioritized than which. And for me, that was actually the hardest point in having that role.
Yes, and it is really hard to take a decision because you don't know if the feature you pick actually brings the value you expect from it. It is always a high level of uncertainty, and it's a high level of complexity. And that's also where we sit with our product. So we cannot control complexity. It's in every product space, you have to do the thing, you have to build things, you have to build knowledge and insights, but you can influence the odds of creating something successful.
We call it reduce the chance of failure. It's statistical chance. So you're just trying to work the percentage with the certainty. Nobody would know what's going to happen.
Yeah. And when I started out with Polyfinity, I kind of wanted to build a tool for myself to reduce the workload of a product manager, to have some tools that help me be more effective. And then, of course, as a good product owner, I started talking to people who should become the actual users and customers. And there's a huge difference between both segments. And I realized that basically everybody struggles to some degree with the same problems. It's like, this is a really hard job. You need to juggle a lot of responsibilities. And then a lot of times the product managers are very absorbed with the day-to-day operational tasks, and they cannot work strategically. So you talked about the roadmap, but building a good roadmap with intention, with strategic decisions is really hard for a product manager who also needs to do everything else. Testing the software, sitting in a million meetings, talking to angry stakeholders who ask why the feature was not delivered as promised, and why the feature is not as amazing as it was advertised before.
It can always be better.
Yes. So it's really hard for a product manager to get all of the things right. And I believe the easiest way of thinking about what we try to do is we try to increase the chances of having a positive outcome. So we cannot control the outcome of the development process, but we can massively increase your chance of success, or as you formulated, reduce the risk of failure. Ultimately, it is not possible to predict the future, but you can cheat a little bit by shifting the odds. Yes, absolutely.
I see. So at Polyfinity, you're actually focusing on the systems that create great products, right?
Yes.
Well, can we talk a bit about that? Because I think all of us, we need systems that can help us create better products. It's not just into the IT world, but actually in any world. I build a lot of service products, and having systems to support you is something that is not that commonly discussed, Bernhard. And maybe that's why I wanted you to come on the show, because when we are building a service or a pre-packaged service, that's a product, or a software product, there is a lot of cost associated with it. And especially in building a new feature or adding additional services. So in my head was that if there are systems that can tell me how much I can, which features to focus on and what actually the market needs, I'm all ears. If there is a secret formula there that you're using at Polyfinity that we can just borrow it or share it with the audience here.
Yes, I'm super happy to share the secret. I would start at the beginning. So what is a system? It is something that is repeatable. It is predictable. And you might not be able to predict the outcome of some activities in the system, but you can predict that the system does what it's intended to do. So in case of software development, you can increase the predictability when a feature is finished, and then you can increase the chance that this feature creates value. And a typical example that I love for systems is they are close to habits. So when you want to go to the gym, which I really love doing a lot, because it helps thinking and disconnecting from all the online things, a really good habit is to have your bag already packed, have it sitting next to your door. So when you decide to go to the gym, there's zero friction in doing it.
You won't have excuses. But I need to pack. Yeah, but they're in the wash machine, so I'm not going today.
Yes. So you make it very easy, and you make it the default way of going to the gym. No excuses. I love going to the gym every day at the same time. So I leave the house 5 minutes to the hour, and I will be there absolutely every day the same way. A system ultimately is created when you start formulating hypotheses about what should happen when you do something. So what is the expected outcome of a process, of some structured thing? And it becomes a system when it is also repeatable. So when you do a thing one time, that's not a process. That's just, you did a task.
Yeah.
So what we focus on is to understand in an evidence-based way, how is the activity you do and the outcome you get connected.
Got it. So the main point behind setting up the system is, last time we talked, you told me that currently you're working with a lot of product owners and that they have a lot of pain when it comes to which is the right feature to build, what is the opportunity cost, or what are the alternatives, and the pressure from the stakeholder as well. So I was just genuinely curious, Bernhard, when you are reaching out to the product owners, what kind of systems do you think that they need to implement in order to start sorting out their product backlog and start getting somewhere?
Yes. So they need a couple of tools and basically a very, very simple system. The tool they need is to have some idea what the product or the purpose of the team is. So if you don't have some form of a product vision, if there's no idea what should be achieved in the future, it gets really, really hard. And this is what many product owners struggle with. So we assume that we of course help building a product vision. It takes some time. You need to do some research. You need to do some conversations with your target audience. But basically, I argue that you can get a basic product vision in 3 weeks that is really solid and can be used to guide a team. And that's the first tool we need. So we need to understand who is our target audience and what problem we want to solve with this piece of software. And having those two things together, we can then decide, okay, what is the actual value created by this product very specifically, or service, of course, it does applies to everything. So for example, when we talked and you help us tremendously with coaching and sales, the product you create is for us to learn as an organization, to really, and last time our team member was like, Dancho is not telling us anything new, but he makes us actually do the things, and he gives us opinions and a lot of insights. So there's a tremendous amount of value, but there's also a lot of clarity what you do. It's a very good service in a way that you know what you get, and you get it, and then at least 50% more, I think. So there's a product vision. I'm pretty sure you have a product vision for what you do and what your company is doing, and that is something I really love to see. With many product owners I talk to, they don't have this. They just work as a factory producing software, but they don't have any coherent idea what this product is actually doing.
Yeah, that's actually quantity over quality. How many features we can deliver rather than have one but very good quality.
Exactly. And the problem is building a feature is the cheap part. Owning the feature also means that it now becomes harder to maintain the product and adding more features. And this usually leads to a product that becomes less capable because it has more functionalities, and a product that usually is not liked by the users so much because it becomes complicated. It becomes not very user friendly, as every feature is just produced as quickly as possible. And then instead of making it awesome, the team moves on to the next feature because they have a long list. So going back to the process, you need to have this understanding of what the future should look like. What is the product vision? What is our purpose in the product? And then the other thing is there has to be some understanding what business value means. And in most products, you can find a single metric that is relevant for the user, that absolutely captures how value is generated by the product. I argue that all products have the same purpose. They should make people feel better. So you buy the product because you expect it to serve a certain purpose in your life. And the very typical example that is used when you think about jobs to be done framework is the milkshake from McDonald's. So people buy this milkshake because it provides entertainment value. It's not a food item, it's actually an entertainment item. And that's the reason why milkshakes are very hard to consume. So it takes a very long time and they don't melt so quickly. So people buy a milkshake because they expect to buy a certain period of entertainment out of it. Nobody buys a milkshake because it's healthy or it has any benefits after you consumed it. It's just empty calories. But it can be really nice as a way of entertainment. So when a team works on a product, they should also understand what is the business value they create. And again, it really depends on what the product vision is, what the goal of the product is. But ultimately, every product can be expressed in like 2-3 sentences. So with our product, we are about creating the systems that get you the outcomes you want. And very specifically for a team developing software, that means creating a product that actually creates a lot of value. And value, in our case, means build products that are impactful, that are successful in the market, that have users who really enjoy using them. And then, of course, they are commercial success. So our metric is when we talk about building our own product, is like, how much is this feature helping our users to create a better system? How much is this feature helping them to create value?
I see. And what happens when you have a lot of features? I mean, it's usually, as a product owner, it's not like I have 1 or 2 features only and it's hard. It's more like I have hundreds in my backlog, and then figuring out which one the perceived values here, which one are better perceived by the user rather than which one is not well perceived. How can you actually differentiate that?
Yes, I can feel you so much. I love coming up with great ideas for features. And we also have a lot of things in our backlog that we want to have. And that is the easy process I talked about. Having the product vision, understanding what business value means. We can now look at every feature idea. And at this point, I would call them an opportunity. So this feature idea has an opportunity to either be a pain reliever or some gain creator for the user. And then I can say, okay, if this feature is built, how will this change the life of the user? So how useful is it? But then I also need to look at two more dimensions. And one dimension is how much risk is associated with building this feature. Is this a very complicated thing? Is this a thing that we don't even know how to build properly or successfully? And then the other thing is, or when I look at risk, there's also the risk that even if we build the feature, it will not generate the value. So how sure are we that this feature is actually working? And one very easy way that a product manager can do is to describe the feature and then talk to 5 people. And talking to your mother is always great, and you should call her way often. But if she is not the target audience for your product, maybe it's great to talk to actual people.
To buy.
Yes. And of course, in this case, it can be the buyer or it can be the user. We differentiate between the two. And if it's the buyer, then of course, I don't need to ask them how they feel about the product. I need to understand if they're willing to pay money for it. It's a relevant problem.
But Bernhard, since you're a serial entrepreneur, if I can say, you still have the entrepreneurial mindset, because even in market research, we're saying you're not just asking, even if you find your user, whether you would buy it, but you're actually saying, well, here is a shortened version, buy it. And then you measure how people are not just what they're saying, it's very nice, but how many people swiped their credit card, like it's going to be out in 3 months if you're willing to buy it now with some discounted rate, of course. So in market research, the votes that we count are the people that actually swipe their credit cards rather than your mother that says, what a nice product. Or even if you find your target audience, they would still be like, it's a very nice idea. And you're like, will you pay? No. Then you still need a different way of feedback.
Yes. It's a good point for entrepreneurs. For startups, that's a different game. For product owners who work in bigger commercial organizations, they usually don't care for this. So they don't do this really honest, easy test. Will you pay for it? As an entrepreneur, I used countless times some lending. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, as an entrepreneur, you have to test the market before you make a bigger investment. And I just, in my head, was a nice comparison, because as a product owner, I'm going to commit X weeks, whether it's 16, whether it's 20 or 30 weeks, into building a feature. So I would rather test the waters before making that commitment, because as you once told me, like, well, if you need 5 developers or 10 developers to build something for 3 months, well, that's a lot of money to build a feature on. And I would rather spend some time or additional resources in making sure that the feature that we're willing to develop, the market values enough to cover the cost, but also achieve some profitability out of that feature.
Yes, absolutely. And when you talk about money spent in a startup, it also means how long will this startup have time to develop the market enough to reach product market fit. So that's a huge point. In a lot of corporations, they don't care for product market fit anymore, but they also need to spend the budget right. And I think that's a really painful point, because somebody is financing the team, somebody is giving trust into the leadership for this team, and they expect results. And that, to me, is even a harder game than in a startup, because in the startup, as a founder, I can take the decisions. I don't need to convince anybody. If I have external funding. So really going in a context where you can actually say, okay, if we don't develop this feature, we will save easily maybe 60,000 euro, 100,000 euro in development costs, just by killing the feature idea, by evaluating the idea early on, and identifying the risk to reward ratio, understanding that this thing sounds good on paper, but when you think about this for an hour, you realize there are 150 things that can go wrong, and everything needs to be aligned perfectly, all the stars and everything, for this to even have a remote chance of being successful. And that's a very typical problem a product owner faces. If they don't have the time, if they don't have the tools, and most importantly, the process, the system to look at ideas, evaluate them, and then take very easy decisions. Because when you look at the idea from a risk perspective, from a value perspective, it becomes a no-brainer.
Yeah. And I was curious, Bernhard, because you said in the corporate world, not all the time the product owner is focused on the business value, that they're more focused on the execution. But then who is taking care about the consumer angle of the feature? Or is it just build as many features and we spend money, and then hopefully, with a big hopefully, it's going to work?
I have only anecdotal knowledge, and I always hope that there are companies out there that do it differently. But a lot of times, the companies are struggling to be customer-centric, to be data-driven. It's more about somebody had a great idea that sounds nice on paper, and then a lot of resources, a lot of team capacity is committed to this idea, and not a single time somebody thought about if this actually will sell. And what makes it even worse is if sales departments, they bring a lot of amazing insights from the customers, but if a salesperson has an idea, they are also very, very good at selling the idea to a team.
Persuasive sales, of course.
Yes. And it could be an amazing idea that will create a lot of value for a single customer, but it's a really horrible idea for the whole product. And so if organizations are listening too much to single ideas, it could lead to a situation where the product is not one product anymore, but it's more like a set of projects.
Biased.
Yes, very biased. So in this case, it could be hard for a product team to just be like, okay, this is an amazing idea. Let's spend 2 months evaluating this idea, do some research and really understanding what is the value it creates for all of our customers, not only this one single person who would benefit greatly from it. Yes, so that is one thing. And I really love when stakeholders have ideas and they bring insights. I think that makes the job of a product manager so exciting. You get a million different viewpoints in larger organizations. The problem is to filter out from all of this noise the 3 ideas that are the winners, the 3 ideas that really create a lot of value for the organization and for the users of the product.
Got it. Well, usually they say the more the merrier, but in ideas, I think everybody has at least 20 ideas of what extra can be done. And then, if I understand you right, it's the product owner job that should have the vision of the product in mind, and then should have the business value of the product in mind. And based on these 2 variables, actually be able to prioritize, say, well, this is a higher priority for us than this one.
Yes. I would argue, actually, the product owner should create the product vision together with all the stakeholders, and then start sharing it, start preaching it every possible time. And when we work with teams, it's also the team that fully understands the product vision. So when the process is actually running, when the team is looking at an idea, everybody has the different perspective. This is how I maybe should introduce the setup a little bit. So a very typical setup is that you have different perspectives in looking at the idea. So maybe you take a designer, a UX expert, a technical person, maybe somebody from sales, maybe somebody from business.
Yeah, diversity.
Yes. And the purpose of this team is to not agree on stuff. They should feel very easy in disagreeing and bringing different perspectives. So we don't want them all to agree on things. Then we have to change people, because the purpose of the team is to disagree and bring different diverse opinions and viewpoints. So looking at the idea, they can all tell from their perspective if this is a good idea, if this brings value, how risky it is, stuff like that. And then the product manager does not need to actually do much anymore, because they are already having all the different perspectives. So maybe I only need to ask a couple of questions. Maybe I bring some additional information. But ultimately, if the team is empowered with a good product vision and they have the right skill set, mindset together, they can very easily come to really, really good decisions on what products to build.
Nice. Well said, Bernhard. And I'm just trying to be time sensitive. So I completely understand your angle. So you at Polyfinity are actually trying to do what? From which angle are you helping the product development team?
So we have 2 different things we offer. One is a very simple service where we help organizations set up teams to evaluate ideas. It's usually called a discovery team that looks at all the different inputs, that looks at the roadmap, and then prioritizes the most impactful, low-risk ideas. And that is something where we just go into the organization, we facilitate the meetings, we allow people to focus a little bit more on the content, and then train them to do this process very efficiently. And actually, it is fun to look at these ideas, but understand how to sort out the bad ones. to identify the things that should not be built. And then whatever is left, of course, can be further refined and pushed towards development. And the other thing is we have a platform developed that allows teams to inspect their processes, to establish their processes, first of all, of course. You mentioned Scrum a couple of times. And Scrum is a very powerful framework. A lot of times it's not implemented in a way that it brings the benefits that people expect from it. And ultimately, what we are doing is to help teams become effective at what they do. So yes, it's about efficiency, but ultimately it's about looking at what's going on in the team, looking at the processes, identifying opportunities for improvement, identifying waste, and then do another circle, do another improvement.
Iteration.
Yes, iterations, and that is what we specialize on. So we are.
And with the discovery team, I think you called it. So actually, this what we were discussing on this call. Actually, having a look at the vision of the product and looking at the business value, you're actually helping a lot of product owners into put the prioritizations of their ideas or features. Let's put it like that, but in order, like order in regards to, wait, this is more risky, it should go downward. This has a much bigger impact to the user, so it has to go higher. And based on that, as a discovery team, the outcome is actually a more stable systems for having a prioritization of the features. Don't spend money on a feature that it's not going to give the biggest value, but actually focus on the features that have the highest potential to bring more value.
Yes. And you can basically say, before we step in, a lot of times there's a roadmap that is for the next 5 years. There are 100 items in the backlog, and everybody is just demanding to get stuff done. And then the easiest outcome is that we have only one feature selected. So the team focuses all the energy on getting one thing done. And there's a framework for prioritization that is called Now, Next, Later, where you basically just say, this is the thing we work on now. That's our current item. Then there's the next item, one item. And then there is later, and later is everything else.
And the backlog.
And it becomes so incredible easy to do when there's the clarity about the value and the risk. So usually there's no effort required to prioritize when you put in the effort to understanding the ideas and understanding the opportunities. So prioritization in most teams becomes 3 minutes. You look at the ideas, you discuss them, and then it becomes very, very clear what should be developed next, because it offers the most value and it offers the best use for the capacity of the team. And that to me is the most fun thing, because what we create is clarity, and we also take away a lot of pressure from the teams, because they no longer work on a roadmap for the next years. They work on one item, and it usually also leads to way more satisfied stakeholders, because they have clarity. Okay, we do this one thing, and this is why we do it. And when it's done, this is the next thing, and this is what they can communicate. This is what they can plan with. And usually it is also way more stable, and the time to market is also reduced, because the team leaves out a lot of waste and a lot of time spent on features that are not really bringing any value.
Yeah, exactly. Well said, Bernhard. I think that we're gonna have to wrapping the episode up, Bernhard. I have 2 things that I just wanted to add at the top. For the people that are in the field and that they are interested in hearing more from you, where they can reach out, Bernhard, how people can find you, or Polyfinity for the matter.
Yes. First of all, polyfinity.com. We also host a lot of events on meetup.com and on LinkedIn. What we do is we have created a community of product managers and agile people where we share ideas. And most of all, we share experiences and insights into what works and what doesn't work. So that is something where you should just come in, take a seat.
Hanging out with a virtual beer.
Yes. And I really love this community events because there are people from all over Europe and the whole world. And then we see what our different experiences bring, and how we can create better products together. And of course, the other thing is we are helping companies, so you can hire us to help your team. Depending on what the team is doing, we are focused on software development. So if you are developing a rocket that should fly to Mars, we are not there yet, but we really understand how to build successful software teams and empower them to become high performance. And that, of course, is the result of a lot of experience in doing it, and also a framework that allows us to do it in a consistent and predictable way.
Nice. And what I'll do, Bernhard, is I'll just put the contact information just below the video. So if everybody's interested to, I don't know, join the community, or maybe just reach out and continue the discussion about the product owner and setting up the frameworks and the right system that gives the right products, that would be useful for all the listeners. And the other thing that I had in mind is that, you know, I'm the geeky guy usually taking notes because I need to get some new lessons out of every podcast that I'm doing. So it's not just for the community, it's also for me at the end. So I have 3 nice things that I take out from this conversation, Bernhard, and I just wanted to point them out because those are the golden nuggets that I'm not a product owner now, but I'm a business owner and they're still applicable on me. So the first thing was that actually you need to have a vision of the product. So for me, that was like, well, if you're building a software, if you don't know where it's headed, of course, any route will take you there. Alice from the Wonderland, I think it was. But in my head, it's also for the company. If you don't have a vision on where you see the company in 2, 3, 5 years, you're going to be just carried by the wind. And I know this personally because until I went to Sri Lanka for a yoga retreat, I was driven by opportunity. Something shiny arises, you go after it. Then something else shiny arises. And in Sri Lanka, I was actually built a vision of B2B for 3 to 5 years, and we're still following it. After 2 years, we're still in the same direction as we planned like 2 years ago. So that was golden nugget number 1, which I'm not sure if everybody caught it, so I have to put it and emphasize. And then the second one was the business value of the product. It's not just the vision of the company, but also you can build as many services as you want or as many features as you want. But until you figure out what is more valued than what, it's going to be either a random or impressions. I feel like this is going to be better than this and not data driven. So without knowing what's the business value of each service in my case, but on each feature in product owner case, how would I know, should I focus on one service over the other? And I had this problem 5 years ago. When I started B2B, we offered business plan, market research, lead generation, appointment setting. Within the first 2 years, we listened to the market and they say, you know what, business plans, we liked it, but not that much. And market research, however, you're killing it in the lead generation. So I was like, let's kick off that features services at B2B and let's triple down, not double down on the lead generation. Let's add appointment setting, let's add email, let's add copywriting, but keep adding features in that direction. So that was a really nice golden nugget. And the third one was the clarity on how you can prioritize features. For me, it also applies, Bernhard, in how you can prioritize tasks, because the now, the next, and the later is I'm currently working with the marketing team because we have like a weekly sprints and a huge backlog of marketing activities. And by huge, I'm saying like more than 300 activities. And we are still struggling to add the clarity. And I know now that if we sit in the marketing, and it's not features, that's why I say for me, the golden nuggets was that if we say, where is the vision of B2B in 3 to 5 years and what consumers value, clients value, and build a marketing strategy around it, then the tasks are really clarity because we know the directions. We know what's now, what should be the one next task and what is for later, because maybe in 3 months, in 6 months, we might change direction. But I find it very applicable even when I was a product owner that these 3 golden nuggets, at least for the product owners that are listening, should give them some clarity in order to, I know, juggling between sales want to add features, partners want to add features, clients want to add features, management wants to add features, stakeholder wants to add feature, developers wants to add feature because they also thought it was a nice idea. And actually juggling between all this and finding some clarity out of it, I really think it's a hard work, but that's why, Bernhard, last thing, usually after every podcast, I'm trying to take out the golden nuggets that I wanted to put emphasize, because other people will find some other golden nuggets for them. But with that, I'm usually finishing this episode, Bernhard. First, I really wanted to thank you for taking the time and coming and sharing your wisdom and knowledge and insight, because, that the whole point of the podcast is try to start giving lessons. And lessons for me is golden nuggets that people can learn something new and start applying it from tomorrow. It's not like, now I need 12 months to do this, but it's like, I learned one nice thing from Bernhard that I can start applying it from tomorrow.
And it was so much fun sharing all of this. And I think you nailed the 3 golden nuggets spot on. And what people can apply tomorrow is to ask the question, what is the vision of what we are doing? And is the task I'm currently working on, is it really aligned with what we want to achieve? Mm-hmm. And I think the example for marketing is really, really nice. You can do so many things. There are so many possible activities, and all of them are great in some context. But finding
resources gives you have to choose.
And finding the one that is the best one for your team, for your organization today, not in 4 weeks, but what can be done today, that becomes much easier when you know where you want to go and when you know what is the business objective of all of these activities. So that was a lot of fun discussing with you. And I'm super happy that you invited me.
Well, Bernhard, thank you again for coming to the show. And for everybody out there, we'll take some lessons, start using it. Come on, we have business to grow. And I'm going to still be on the search. We still believe that we can find some really nice experts like Bernhard, that they can give us some golden nuggets that we can start using it. So until we have another expert in the field, everybody do have a great day. And Bernhard, we stay in touch for sure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.